I need more than one word, so let's...
We did the ascending system of knowledge.
Very good. Because today's title is Descending System of Knowledge, you remember now. Okay. Talked about it. In our budget, we need pens. Oh, really? You guys are not paying your tuition?
That one will work.
Okay, so what about the ascending system of knowledge? Some things you remember? What were we talking about? Since you brought it up.
We talked about the connection of knowledge in the relative term and not in the absolute term.
Knowledge or information in relative sphere. Okay, what is it about relative sphere? Remember the very first presentation we made when we defined knowledge? What was knowledge defined as?
Wait.
Well, that's translation into Sanskrit, but what is knowledge?
Knowing something as it is.
Very good. To know something as it is. So if you have knowledge of something in the relative sphere, do you know it as it is? No, so it's not true knowledge. It's already something other than true knowledge. Very good. Okay. Something else about ascending system. It is primarily based on or relied upon
our senses.
Senses and senses give us direct perception. What else?
Our interpretation of mind, intelligence,
Mind.
and false. Mind.
Mind means this is direct and this is deduced. Something else.
Knowledge for one person is not the same for the other person. So,
So that's
or relative. Okay.
The elements of I, the policy.
how is the ascending system based on I? What is the problem with it? Egocentric. What is the issue here? What's the egocentricity of relative knowledge?
Bodily concern.
True, but we talked in a particular manner. The four defects, you remember the four defects?
Limited senses and
There
mistakes,
are limited centers,
we do
so
mistakes.
there's a possibility I could make a mistake
Illusion and
because I can come into illusion. Then there's
cheating.
Cheating propensity.
I mean, I'm convinced that I know the truth, and someone else is convinced that they know the truth. And so I profess the truth as if I know it. Egocentric, the blind man and the elephant story that we talked about. What else about relative knowledge?
It's not absolute, it's speculative.
Very good. Speculative.
It changes when your assumptions change.
Correct. Speculative. And I was going to use the word erroneous, but I could also say something. When you say speculative, it means it's non-conclusive. Because you can come to a conclusion, but it's not the conclusion anyway. Someone else can come to a different conclusion. They can take that, further build it, or redefine the entire paradigm and come up with something else, which we do, right? Often. And there is one more. In terms of just resources, it is time, money, and let's say resources. Resource inefficient. It's an inefficient system. Why? Because every time one has to come to understanding knowledge, they always have to start from the beginning. They have to redefine the assumptions. Here's a problem. If I don't start from the beginning, and I say, let's say Avello came up with a conclusion, okay, in the descending system, whatever conclusion he came up with, if I start mine from where he stopped,
Error propagates.
I'm already including all his errors into my model. And if I have to restart, then I'm making my own assumptions because I have faulty senses, limited. I will anyway come up with my set of errors. So in that sense, it's an inefficient system. The Vedas don't talk in this language. They give us a very simple question. What do you do if you want to know who your father is?
Some other.
Huh?
Ask it.
Well, that's the ascending, that's the descending system. We call this the ask your mother system. Do you want to name that system then? So here's a very simple example.
Ask
I want to know
everyone.
who my father is. Suppose. So in this, can you explain in this system how I will go about it?
Ask everybody in the world.
No, so let's lay out the experiment design.
Find out.
So raise your hand. So I want to know who my father is, and I'm starting with something.
Do DNA analysis.
DNA. For DNA, I need someone. What do I need?
Find out.
I don't need mom, dad. I need males who potentially could be my father.
Age can be.
And that means, let's assume somebody who's at least 17 years older than I am. There itself is a problem. Okay? My daddy could have tried it when he was 14 or 15. I don't know. But if I've completely eliminated a whole demographic segment that's between 14 and 17 years older than I am. But I assume, let's start with at least 17 years older than I am. I'm hoping my daddy was a nice guy, whatever. 17 and older. Okay, so I have to find all males 17 and older. Then what else?
A race.
Race. I have no idea what race he might belong to. I may make some assumptions. My eye color, my hair color, maybe we'll say Asian or maybe from the Indian subcontinent. Fine. What else? What other assumption you want to make to find my father?
You have to assume he's still alive.
I have to assume that he's alive, naturally. If I want his DNA, assume that he's alive. So there's a problem. That if he has already passed away, then I don't have that as an option, as a element in my universe or choice set. What else?
Then 9 months before you were born, he should have been in the same place as your mother.
Okay. You're really good at complicating. You're a PhD student. You're thinking simple right now.
Same face cut or something.
Other things. I should have the money to reach that male, wherever the male is. Otherwise, I can't take DNA sample, right? I may have to reach them. The second is, even if I have the money,
Time.
I don't have the time. I don't know. Physically, I can't make it to all the males at least 17 years old and older than I am. Because even if he's alive, by the time I reach him, he may not be. So you see this system. Okay, even after that, I might, suppose I somehow hone into that person and I do a DNA analysis. Is it true that every DNA analysis is 100% conclusive and accurate?
No, it's 99.99.
That's correct. So I might be the fool in that other 0.01%. I could call someone daddy and it might be wrong. So now for the sake of simplicity, you ask your mothers formally, very simple. Now someone can say, well, how do you know your mother knows? I mean, in those cases, I don't have an answer. But in most cases, the mother knows. This is very efficient, accurate. It is not fraught with any of these errors or problems. Of course, the Vedas don't call it the ask your mother system. We're calling it like that. Okay. So, the one of the necessary elements for this system is, guess what? Where do I get the knowledge from? Who does mother represent here?
Guru. Which
Guru, but
source?
very, very general
Source.
An absolute source.
Very,
Someone.
thank you. Absolute source. So naturally, if you want to define the characteristics of absolute source, is creating you. But in the case of the relative source, we said because it's based on senses and mind, there are those 4 defects, remember? So in this case, there should be
Unlimited.
No defects.
free of 4 defects. Because it's not speculative, it is not guesswork, I think your daddy is. So it's free of that, free of the errors or the limitations that this system poses. What else? Anything else? Just one thing covers everything? Says yes, it does.
Conclusive.
Conclusive. Just because I added dot here, you don't have to really think that there must be something. Just I'm asking, is there anything? Fact. Yeah, that's a good conclusion. Truth.
Representative.
Representative? What do you mean?
Like instead of being egocentric, it takes all those
In this context, egocentric means I'm the source of this knowledge. Where in this, because it is descending, it should descend from another source. So it is something that's passed on. It's not egocentric. So in the Bhagavad Gita language, this system is called disciplic succession. In Sanskrit, for those of you who care. It's called parampara. It is an unbroken chain of teacher-student relationships that holds truth sacred and non-changing and passes it on. So whenever we get some truth, especially about, last time we drew 2 realms, right? This is the relative realm. And this is the absolute realm. Sometimes this is called transcendence. Transcendental. We cannot accept every time someone says something, we have to check if it is coming through an ascending system or whether it's in a descending system. In descending system, it is absolute, it is conclusive, it is truthful. So the Vedas, the Vedic knowledge is supposed to be passed down this way. In fact, any knowledge is supposed to be passed down this way.
Since we are saying that it's not egocentric because it's descending in a parampara, so how do we know that the origin was not egocentric?
This was your question to me 2 weeks ago. How do you know the origin is not egocentric?
Egocentric.
So what does that mean for you?
In the sense that this knowledge, someone came upon the truth.
No, it was
and
not like they
passing
were
it on.
walking around and they stumbled upon it. That's not how it works. So, now I'm going to change language. Okay. So far we were talking language that is what we are used to. It's the empiric, experimental lexicon. I've been using that language. So I'm going to shift gears and use language that describes this. Okay. So that source, because we said it's an absolute source. So in the Vedas, that source is defined. Okay? That source from which everything comes, even knowledge, whole of the creations, the absolute realm, the relative realm, everything comes from that source. And that source is such that that source itself doesn't have a source because it's absolute. Correct? If it has a source, then it's not absolute source, it's a relative source. True? What is the source of ocean water? Rain?
No, there is no source.
It's still like that. It's there. It has no source. It's not like, I want to get that. But the idea is, that source that doesn't have a source itself, but is the source of everything. So that, in the Vedic language, sometimes it's used as that. Most often is used supreme. Or in more general is God. These are definitions. So according to the Vedas, so the Vedas use general language. General language is where indicator that says New York is east, due east from here. That's general. It's just indicator. It doesn't give any other information. So within the Vedas, there are sections of knowledge that are general and which others are very specific. And the idea is to move from general to specific. Specificity means New York has so much population. It is a little island, so shooting off of the state of New York. It has Empire State Building. You will find this road, that road, etc., etc. It's very specific. So that specificity, the language use or the word use is Krishna, because that's what the Bhagavad Gita says. And the Bhagavad Gita is considered to be the summary or the essence of all Vedic literature. So this word Krishna, people generally consider, oh, is that person who's the Hindu god or just like that. The word Krishna in Sanskrit means all attractive. Now the source naturally is all attractive, whether they're atheist or not atheist, it is irrelevant. Because from the source everything comes, and each one of us is attracted to something in this world. Is there anyone who's not attracted to anything? Do you know? There cannot be. Every individual, every living entity is attracted to something. So they are attracted to God directly or indirectly. Even atheists are attracted to God. How?
believe that there is no God.
No, actually they spend a lot of their time thinking of how to disprove that there is no God. So actually I think they think more of God than theists themselves.
So when you say light, the flip of it is absence of light. So when you're talking of it, you're anyway talking of God. They're attracted, even an atheist is attracted to a beautiful sunrise, right? Or something that's attractive in this world. But if everything is sourced from, then there is attraction, knowingly or unknowingly, directly or indirectly, but there is attraction. So naturally, that personality that attracts everyone was Krishna. It's a very apt name for God. This is how Srila Prabhupada would explain. So this absolute source, or the knowledge, is ever existing. Okay? Just as the living entity, we talked about who am I, right? 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. When we say who am I, we were little spiritual living entities. Avilo had this picture of us, remember? And he said we were what? There were 3 characteristics about us.
Gross cognition, this eternal cognition, this
It's four.
Right? Eternal. By the fact when we say eternal, it means it was not sourced. It is ever existing. Similarly, the Vedic knowledge, because it is sourced from the Absolute, because the Absolute is ever existing, the Vedic knowledge is ever existing. It's eternal. Okay, so it's not thought through by somebody, oh, this would be a nice thing to talk about. It is eternally coexisting with the source. Okay. So from there, for it to come down in parampara, there has to be a succession. And one should be able to trace out from that source every progression that knowledge has made. And it's available. So there are paramparas even now that can trace all the way back to Krishna, how the knowledge was originated. Yeah.
But there should be checks in place to see that the knowledge is not distorted along the
Correct.
way, right?
So in this, good question. Let me ask you, if the absolute knowledge is such, how do you put together a check and balance system? How do you check? First, before that, let's talk about, is there another marker here? Different color. What are the qualities by which this knowledge is accessed? So first, this run. What do you need to gather this knowledge?
We need our senses and mind. Senses and the mind.
Well, there are many people in an asylum with senses in mind, but there is something that others have.
time and
Where are we right now?
University.
We're in an
university.
institution. We're in a place of learning, correct? There is some training. We're trained in scientific thinking, correct? We are taught the elements of experimental design, how to set up an experiment, how to write out our assumptions, how to go about conducting our experiment, how to gather data, how to analyze the data, and how to present it, how to make conclusions from it, correct? There is some training. And for that training, there are some qualities that we need to develop. What qualities do we need to get through college? Hard work. Our professor hard work here.
Money.
Hard work.
Money.
Money, very good.
Intelligence.
Some basic intelligence, sure. and a lot of repetition.
Yeah.
That's our training. We
Research.
build skills here. Right? And how do we go through it? How do we go through the system? Does this do anything with who a person is? Does this system look at the character of a person?
No, not really.
Can you be very accomplished in this relative field even if you're a third-rate character? Sure. In fact, yeah. So the kinds of things that matter here are very different. Now this knowledge, because this is on the side of spiritual, there is also training required. But what is the training in? The training is character. This is the most important thing. And this character is not just qualities of morality. You know, what are the qualities of morality? What are the traits of a person who's moral? I'm just thinking out loud. So,
Truthful.
yeah, truthful. What else?
Modest.
Huh?
Modest.
Modest. A moralist doesn't have to be modest, honestly. A moralist doesn't have to be. He just is. Principle. Certain moral principles, they'll adhere to them. Character goes higher than that. So, specifically for Vedic knowledge to be accessed, there are certain characteristics or there are certain qualities necessary to develop. First is called humility. We'll explain. I mean, this is a whole semester worth on just on its own. Humility. Tolerance, or another is austerity. Something else?
Gratitude.
Very good.
Steadfastness.
Etc. Some of these do manifest here, but because it is relative, when the circumstances change, person's qualities change. I may be very humble and truthful in this circumstance, some other circumstance, and it will go away. Like that. So relative means things can change. But these are the qualities. I mean, this is just a short list, it's not the complete list of things. So now, when this knowledge has to be transferred or given to someone, the next person in the disciplic succession, unless they are trained in these qualities, that knowledge will not enter. They cannot hold that knowledge with them. They can even repeat those words, correct? And those words will not affect anyone. They will not be able to cultivate these qualities in another person. Or in other words, they will not be able to train the next generation of person or any other person in their character, because their own character is questionable. So you see how the system itself has precision in it. I can't give someone what I don't have. Somebody summarized the entire materialistic knowledge that we have in universities and other places of research and education in 5 words. Information, 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 no transformation. We get so much downloading of information, but the person, the character doesn't change just because we went through university system. We use the word education. Any person who knows Latin here? Is there, anything in Latin? The word educare in Latin means to awaken. Awaken to what? The real awakening, if a person is educated, the real awakening is of character. This is called real education. I used to have a friend in school who used to tell me, he would eat any time of the day, any number of times in a day. And so we would tell him, how are you eating? You're not even hungry. He said, what's eating got to do with hunger? In his mind, that was his paradigm. Or some people would say, there's a big difference between literacy and education. Most people are very literate, but very few are educated because there's no character. We're not developing character in our educational systems. So when there is character, one will not tinker with the truth. You understand? So you asked, right, how do I know that from this generation it gets to the next generation? Because my character, whoever I am, is such that I will not mess with the truth. And the moment I mess with the truth, I can't say I profess the truth anymore. It slips away. So real truth is the rightful asset of a person with character. You mess around with the character, the truth evades. There are so many persons who speak about the Bhagavad Gita. Go look at their life, how they live their life, and you will know. That's important. That is how truth is cherished or preserved. And so the next generation is trained in those same qualities and values. That's how the truth is passed on. And in our, in the Vedas itself, there are explanations of people's character that has stood the test for all of these qualities. They've never moved from humility, they've never moved from determination, whatever is the circumstance. That's why we call them great persons. In this world, there are many great persons here, so-called great persons. But their life doesn't reflect the actual greatness. They're great in this, but really lacking in true qualities. Someone may be a very good speaker, orator. They may be very accomplished in their field of knowledge. But the core of who they are, very questionable. I'm going to pick on someone, not because I have something against that person, it's just an example. Dale Carnegie. Anyone heard the name Dale Carnegie? The superhero of how to win friends and influence people. That was his book, bestseller book. How did Dale Carnegie die? Suicide. He jumped out of his 27th or 40th floor apartment. A person who's telling the world how to make friends died because he didn't have any friends. For example. Or someone else may be very accomplished here, but they may be victims of some addiction, alcoholism or something. We know such examples, right? I mean, so many great persons, supposedly successful from a worldly perspective, but from who they are, the fabric of that is not really strong. If they become victims to frailties. On the other hand, persons here, they may not be literate like this, but they are really educated. In the life of a personality called Sri Chaitanya, he was traveling through South India. This was about 500 years ago. This is just one example. And he met a Brahmana in a South Indian temple. And he was illiterate. He couldn't decipher words or letters or language. He just didn't know. He was illiterate. But his guru or teacher had told him that he should study the Bhagavad Gita every day. How does an illiterate person study the Bhagavad Gita? He cannot. So when Sri Chaitanya came to meet him, he saw this Brahmana holding the Bhagavad Gita. And everyone else was laughing at this person. But this person was holding the Bhagavad Gita, and by the way, he was holding it upside down. Because he couldn't tell which is right way up. But as he was reading Bhagavad Gita, there were tears from his eyes. So Sri Chaitanya asked him, "Are you faking these? What's going on?" He said, "No, my guru has given me an instruction that I should study the Bhagavad Gita every day. But unfortunately, I don't know how to read. But I'm doing this because I've been asked to do so. It's an order from my guru, so I have to follow it." So Sri Chaitanya asked him, "Well, you're following the order, but since you can't read it, how are you benefiting from it?" He said, "No, I can't read it. But whenever I hold the Bhagavad Gita, a picture comes to my mind. I see Krishna in that picture. And Krishna, I understand, is God. I mean, he is the most powerful personality in creation ever. He is God. And he has taken the very menial role of being a servant of his devotee Arjuna. He is a driver, he is a chauffeur. That God can take such a humble position. When I think of that, I think of how much he loves his devotee. When I think of that, tears come to my eyes. And Sri Chaitanya said, "You understood Bhagavad Gita better than anyone else. Because that's the spirit of it. It's the relationship between a person and God, and how that relationship is full of loving exchanges." That conclusion an illiterate person came to. Like that. So the descending system of knowledge, very, very powerful. Very easily accessible. Truth becomes very easily accessible. Ask your mother, sister, right? It's very easily accessible. Don't have to waste time. All we need to begin with are three things: humility, inquiry, and service. It's not like I take my car each month for service, get the engine tuned up, change the oil. Not like that service. Service means it's a demonstration of gratitude. So without gratitude, we cannot develop character. I mean, that's true even in day-to-day life, what to speak of in transcendental life. So the humility is characterized by, I don't know, and I would like to know the truth, and I don't know the truth. I don't know the truth is a very simple, non-egocentric statement. True? Versus a very egocentric statement is,
I know.
I already know. Or I can find out, I don't need anyone's help. I can find out the truth. I'll go about it on my own. I met a man this morning. came to our temple, and while I was speaking with him, how are you? Thank you for coming. What can I do for you? He was typing into his phone. So I thought maybe he's finishing up a text or something, so I just waited patiently. After he typed it, he showed it to me. So he said, I'm on a vow of silence. But he's talking to me on text. I'm on a vow of silence. So I asked him why. So he typed something else. He said, because I'm on a project. I'm on a project to work on non-violence and peace. So then I asked him something, and he couldn't type as fast. So he put the phone down, picked up his notebook, and started writing. Same things. So I asked him, why would you like to work with us? Or do you know what we do? He said, your method is, there's only one door to truth. My method is, I have many doors. Right? And I was thinking, asking him, if there are many doors, you anyway have to take a door to go somewhere. You can't go through all the doors at the same time. But I said, there's not the time to argue. So I just we were having this dialogue, and his idea of truth is whatever his way of searching for the truth was. So I asked him, okay, can you come back on such and such day? Because right now I'm in the middle of something, I'd like to talk to you. When can you come back? And by the way, what's your name? He said, I have no name. Because name is a designation. I don't have a name. It's just me. You can call me the fiddler because he carries a violin or something. Call me the fiddler. I said, already you can meet my friend. His name is Rocker. What else is there? But the idea of himself, the truth, is not based on anything. It was just something that came up. It occurred to him. Or he picked a few things from here and there, and developed his own idea of truth. That's this system. We read something from, Far Eastern philosophy. We read a little something from here. We read a little from Greek philosophy. We pick up a little Japanese Zen. It's a salad bar of our ideas, and then we put together a little thing, and that's my religion, my philosophy. That's how I see things. How do I know that that's the right thing? I don't know. It just seems right. I like it. This will not take us to truth. It can take us to something we like. It's not about truth. So there's a system that allows. So anyway, this humility that I don't know, I want to know, actually brings us to inquiring, asking, and asking from a proper source. If you ask the wrong source or wrong question, you will not get a right answer. So you have to ask the right question, you have to ask the right source. And when we get an answer, express that gratitude. That gratitude is not just a thank you or a nice warm feeling somewhere. Or as nowadays the nice warm feelings are called spiritual experiences. Oh, I was so spiritual. I stood under that tree and it was calm. I had a really spiritual experience. That's not spiritual. Real spiritual experience is when somebody in this line we contact and we serve them. However we can define service and we serve them, that's fine. But we serve them, that mood of service. Very important. In some of the old, when I was growing up, I used to watch a lot of martial art movies, especially Shaolin something, and they would show the young aspirant really put through severe, austere training, right? Because they were learning. It was not just that they were learning a martial art; they were learning something else. It was expressed differently through martial arts, but it was not for the sake of violence or something. For me, that's like the easy parallel to draw. And they spent their time doing what? In the monastery. What were they doing? They were serving. They would carry water from down the hill all the way up the hill. They would do something else. They would do something else. They would chop wood. It's service. That was their expression of gratitude for what they were receiving. So all of you, get your water from down the hill. Chop the wood. It's getting cold. But the idea is service. That's the descending system. Any other questions, comments? Is this clear? What we're talking about? There is some vagueness. I intentionally kept some vagueness in this because I'm developing the idea. And so we'll go from this into more specific areas. Like we'll come to the concept of defining God. What is that? Who is that? Why should God? Is a God a power, source, energy, something? Is it a person? Why? Why not? Question?
Yeah,
I have a question for you. Your name first.
Jagdish.
Jagdish.
Like,
What does Jagdish mean? It's a name. It has some meaning?
I think so.
Do you know?
I'm not sure. Maybe some.
What is
God,
Jag?
God.
What is Jag?
Ishvara.
What is Jagat? Yeah.
Jagat means
The universe. Isha means?
Ishvara.
Ishvara. No. Ishvara doesn't mean Ishvara. What does Ishvara mean? Controller. So you are the controller of the universe. Please ask your question.
Thank you. So, like, when we read the, study the evolution, evolution of the ideas from Darwin to today, what is proved. Everything evolved. There is nothing like something existed or something was created by God. It was proved. It was proved like all the, including what we see, the metals or everything got evolved through the physical process or the biological process. So when we know today, the science developed to that extent, we know nothing was created by, it was proved. And I'm going to say I know, I'm saying things are proved. So how do we say in that thing this Vedic knowledge existed and...
Yeah, go ahead. First of all, this is not a class on Darwin evolution theory. Someday when we pick up that topic, we'll get into it. But Darwin's theory has not been proved. Darwin himself could not prove anything. Darwin wrote on the basis of certain observations and a superset of assumptions. First of all.
But it is
Hold on.
it is proved right today. Even people are...
How is it proved? Nothing is proved.
Meaning the creatures evolved based on the need and the natural selection.
So that is, for Darwin to even observe it is impossible. Because according to Darwin, the first idea was in the Galapagos Islands, there was a finch that had a beak of a particular shape. And he assumed that when I look at another species, it's called the evolution of species, that because of need and natural selection, this beak had to become longer. So over millions of years of adaptation, that beak became longer and it became a different species. Darwin did not live millions of years to see it or observe it. It's a conclusion based on speculation.
That's why Darwin did not prove, but now people are taking the DNAs and relating the species.
Right.
So when they see that, they have the common DNA.
Oh, just because they have common DNA, just because there is common DNA, to conclude that this transformed into that is not correct. There can be common DNA. Anyway, so like I said, I'm happy to have this conversation when we come to that topic. But just to let you know, don't just accept it because there is empirical evidence. Empirical evidence last week you were not here. Empirical evidence does not give conclusive truth. Not necessarily. Just because it is empirical.
What do you mean?
Empirical
this
means,
is done through like observations.
and we discussed last week that because you observe something, it's not true that what you observe has to be true. You could be observing wrongly. You could make a whole set of assumptions about your observation wrongly.
Dog example.
Huh?
Example of a dog.
I gave example of that ad, commercial, you were not there. Remember the commercials we talked about?
Yeah.
He got perfect observation. His data was correct. His conclusions were completely wrong. Everything was correct. There was nothing wrong in the data that he picked out. The woman who comes out of the minivan, sees the man with the dog, picking up the ice cream sandwich. Every piece of data was accurate. The conclusion was completely wrong. So, I wish you were here last week. Can you get...
The video is on
Video.
Facebook.
Alright, the video is on Facebook. Can you please do us a favor, Jagdish? Last week's discussion is on video. Please watch that video. And then let's have more conversation. Is that right? That way I don't have to go for another hour what we did last week. Then we can use, from there on we can have more discussion. We can build on that. Anything else?
I just had an observation about observing things. We can always refine our experiment almost indefinitely, such that whatever wrong conclusions or errors that we have, it's eliminated in the further iteration.
Right.
Like for taking that ad as an example, say the cat, it was stepped into the sauce, so we can always scrape that sauce off and check if it's blood or sauce.
That's correct.
So so even that way, is it possible to, in your opinion, is it possible to arrive at truth?
No, because first of all, you don't know where the errors are. Just because someone else came and said, I want to have a different set of assumptions. You're starting as a conditioned soul. Now I'm speaking Bhagavad Gita language. As a conditioned soul who's under illusion, you cannot say, I know things beyond illusion. You're always illusioned. An always illusioned person cannot come up with something that's beyond illusion unless one is refined to go beyond illusion. So when you have proper training, the proper training of character, then we go beyond illusion. The character training is not just that one is humble and all that. This is all in relation to the source, God. Only then these character values can actually manifest. Otherwise one cannot be. That is called real spiritual person. That their life is in relation to God. Then you can go beyond illusion because the source is beyond illusion. You understand? So as I approach the source or the truth, I am moving from illusion to knowledge. Just as if there is a fire, I am feeling cold. As I move closer to the fire, I feel warm. So as I move closer to the absolute source, I see from the absolute source's vantage point. Otherwise, in illusion, we can keep correcting ourselves, but we're still illusion. It's a relative realm. Last time we drew this line. So whether you're here in the relative realm or here in the relative realm, you're still in the relative realm. The example we used was if one is drowning 3 feet below water or 200 feet below water, it's still drowning. It's not that one is better than the other. Hey, I drowned only in 3 feet. True? Drowning is drowning. So in the relative realm, you could do anything. Still relative. You can keep correcting, refining. Yes, that is possible. It's still in the relative realm. Because you're not considering absolute source. Yes?
So if you are going through discipline succession, do you need to conclude things according to that, or it will automatically manifest?
Well, the idea is to align our conclusions with the conclusions that are in or from the disciplic succession. And that's how we align ourselves. Is truth revealed? Yes. So practically. Practical is we see differences among ourselves. Correct? We say, suppose, oh, persons of that country or persons of that race are all like this. We do have a tendency of stereotyping people. True? But a person who is spiritually awakened, they don't see those distinctions. They say, well, this is spirit, soul, this is a soul. Both are parts of God. And in that sense, there's no difference in them. There is equality. Right? This was the IIT presentation, TEDx one, unity in diversity. There's unity. We see the diversity. Spiritual persons see the unity. So our alignment with the truth is, when we meet another person, it's not just the bodily covering, but their identity. That's another spirit soul. So among human beings, then it comes to different entities that we would just kill without even thinking. Now do we kill? Because a living being is a spirit soul in a different body. But now I have respect for that because, well, I can't. So we have to align ourselves with that truth. Now it's not a mental adjustment. Oh, I don't think so, but I should align. As we develop our relationship with the disciplic succession, or the persons in the disciplic succession, our character will develop like theirs. That means these qualities will manifest.
This descending and ascending system, now to tie it back to our first lecture, the main goal is to solve those 4 problems. Or
The main goal is to solve those 4 problems so that one can actually engage in the real pursuit of knowledge. Otherwise, we are just busy fixing things. Suppose I have a house and I spend all my money in fixing something in the house. There is a leak here, there is a smudge there, there is a hole or gap here. All I'm spending my time is fixing things in the house. I never get to entertain my friends. I never get to. What's the use of living in that house? All I'm doing is fixing it. One day it'll be perfect so I can do something with it. But so when we live in this material world, that's all we're doing. We're fixing our problems constantly. Something's going wrong, we're trying to fix it. Someone said something, we're fixing that. This is not right, we're fixing this, we're fixing that, we're adjusting this, we're adjusting that, we're adjusting this, we're adjusting that. We're not living life.
right. Now the question why I had this was in day-to-day life. Only if you have a problem do we try to learn something.
Right.
So what is the problem for us to pursue this?
Oh,
that
good question.
That was a way.
The problem that we have to pursue this is, first, we're trying to pursue happiness. That's how we started. The question is, are we being happy? Are we really happy? And if someone says yes, then we challenge that happiness. We said, are you always happy? How long does that happiness stay? And it's all relative anyway. So if by nature you're blissful, then why not pursue eternal happiness? That's where we're building all this. Yes?
You said that Krishna means something much attraction.
Krishna doesn't mean it. Krishna means all attractive.
Okay, so can we take it like Krishna means black and black body attracts all the radiation? Can you understand it like that?
No.
Because black body takes all the radiation, just like Krishna. And Krishna means black. So
Krishna also means black,
Yeah.
but that doesn't
Can you
mean
understand?
that's what it means. It's a person who's all attractive. The word Hari means Lord Vishnu. It means lion. It also means monkey. So you just don't take you don't take away and put any meaning in it. There may be some phenomena of a perfectly black body that can absorb all light and energy. But that's not meaning of Krishna. Okay, ready for lunch? Something else? Okay. Okay, thank you all for joining us. Okay. We'll have lunch, and if more question comes up, we'll talk then. Question for you, we can turn off.